Yes, hello and welcome. It's another Confessions podcast here from your friends at Radio 2. Boy, are you guys up to bad things. This week's concise collection includes a saggy sofa saga, a crazy camera coup, the Ballad of a Belligerent Budgie, very good, and a neck-twisting neoprene nightmare. 9 out of 10, I think. Anyway, who are you going to forgive from this merry lot? Dear Simon and the Very Caring Collective, this story involves me and my younger brother Terry. During our childhoods, both our parents worked full-time. So after school, I would walk Terry back home. I'm 2.5 years older than him. Once home, we would watch TV, eat all the biscuits, then pretend we hadn't when our man returned home. We were forever on the hunt for the perfect game. This was before computers were a household necessity and probably a year or two before we got our first video game. Oh. The year is 1989 and our parents had saved long and hard to buy themselves a brand new settee and 2 chairs. Oh. Beautiful it was as well. Green Draylon with tassels hanging from the bottom.
Classy.
I'm sure you've seen...
Classy. That's
yeah,
classy.
Do you think Draylon is that high class?
Tassels are the future.
And tossels.
And tossels, yes. Indeed, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen them, says Sally. Anyway, they'd never owned a settee before. Having always had other people's cast-off, so naturally they were both very taken with this new furniture. You know this is going to end badly for the furniture. Over the months, we had created ourselves a number of very exciting games, such as how many biscuits you could fit in your mouth while singing the theme tune from Dogtanion and the Musket Hounds, a classic, I'm sure you'll agree. So at some point, one of us, I honestly don't recall which one of us it was, though probably me as I was 12, created ourselves a game which we called Crash You're Dead. It basically involved one of us sitting in one of the brand new armchairs, while the other one stood behind it and placed all their weight onto the chair, tilting it at an angle. It was the job of the person sitting down to get the chair back onto all 4 feet without moving off the chair. There's a whole game show, I think, with this. Could be Saturday night television.
Absolutely.
Could be a new lottery show, Alan.
Yeah.
You could
There's a format here. There's a format.
I used to think that this was a great idea. We still play it now when we meet up with our families and our kids think we're mad, but I now realise how dangerous this actually is, and I don't think anyone else should try it at home.
Compliance.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
So here's where things started to go wrong. During one particularly lengthy game of Crash You're Dead, with me sitting down and Terry standing up, both feet of the chair snapped off the back of it.
Oh, no.
The beautiful green Draylon tassel chair crashed to the floor. Oh, dear heavens, we both said in unison. Dad was going to go crazy. As I said, we'd never owned these before from new. These were our first ones. We decided to fix the feet back into their original position, not with glue or anything sensible like that, you understand? No, just balance them, place them indeed back into position and left the scene of the crime, promising each other we would never ever speak of it again. Fast forward a few weeks. I should point out, by the way, this chair thankfully was rarely used. It only ever sort of came into our lives when we had
visitors or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. The only time it was actually used was when Nana Elsie came for Sunday lunch.
Nana Elsie.
And then we were informed that Nana Elsie was indeed coming for lunch. Oh, no. If ever our poker faces were going to be needed, now was the time. Sunday lunch was pretty uneventful in itself, except for Nana Elsie deciding to have a second helping of Dad's trifle. Dad was a chef. Yes. While commenting, I must start a diet, I'm a size 20 already. I think you can see where this is going. After lunch was over, she plonked herself down on the beautiful green Draylon chair with its tassels around the bottom, and as soon as her bottom hit the Draylon, the back 2 legs, again, snapped with a loud thud, and the whole chair collapsed onto the floor. Everyone stood and stared at Nana Elsie, who was legs akimbo and unable to get out of the chair, unable to get the chair back into place. Both had to be helped by Dad. A thorough assessment of what had happened took place, with Dad confirming that yes, Nana Elsie indeed needed to start that diet as she had broken the legs off his brand new chair. They kept that settee for another 10 years and then they gave it to Nana Elsie. Honestly, it lasted that long. They don't make things as long-lasting in Draylon anymore. She used that settee and one chair until she went into a home 2 years ago, where now at the age of 88, she is still none the wiser that technically she didn't need to start that diet after all. So, Father Simon and the collective, me and my brother seek forgiveness for never having owned up to the fact that it was us that broke the chair. or that we allowed our dad to regale that story for the last 24 years without admitting that we were the ones to blame. Our defence is that we were both very young and would have gotten into loads of trouble from our parents if we'd actually told the truth. It was too late by this point, and the lie just kept on going, and for that we're very sorry. So, and if Dad is dining out on this thing, which he appears to be, the story of why Nana Elsie did not need to go on the diet and who is really to blame for the crashed Draylon chair has finally been revealed. Sally begs forgiveness and Sister Rebecca speaks.
It sounds like, you know when they do the Graham Norton show at the end when they pull the chair back with the lever? It sounds
Exactly like
Nanny
that.
Elsie was in that position when the chair collapsed. I actually think that if you've got children, you should never buy new furniture. I think you need to wait until the children are old enough not to trash your furniture. Well, that's we've had our sofa for 25 years. I'm not allowed to replace it until the children leave home. It's really sad, isn't it? It's really falling apart. But that's what my husband is insisting on. So I think,
You've got a tatty
the
house
green...
then, haven't you?
Yeah, very tatty. The green Draylon, I think it was actually the parents' fault for buying new furniture, and if they'd been old, the children probably would have fessed up.
But
because
they'd had old furniture all their lives. They were really proud at last they'd got a new one.
That's true. I do feel a bit sorry for Nanny Elsie, but I do think, I stand by what I said earlier. So I'm going to forgive you, Sally.
Woo!
Dean
I'm
of Devon.
going to forgive as well, actually. Not telling the truth is bad. Being sorry is good, though. She did say she was sorry, did Sal.
This is almost like a commentary on the news.
Nana Elsie... Oh, it's very tempting to do that. It's a good one for today as well. Nana Elsie did plonk herself down, to be fair, and plonking implies quite heavy sort of
Yes, and
movement.
she had another piece of trifle.
Nana was not hurt, and a diet was good for Nana Elsie anyway.
Yes.
So a lot of good came from this. I forgive.
OK, well, let's find out how forgiving or unforgiving new boy Chris is actually going to be.
Yeah, come on.
You're so soft, you two. I cannot believe that you both forgiving. I think it's unforgivable. Incidentally, has Nana Elsie's name been changed for the purposes of this
almost
story?
certainly.
Yes, I'm sure. I have great sympathy for Nana Elsie and for the rest of the family. Sally, it's unforgivable. It reminds me of when I was a child, constantly being told not to rock backwards and forwards on the chair.
Yes, well, we all do it. We all do it.
I still do. In fact, we had, just a slight digression, we had some friends to dinner not too long ago. One of the guests was rocking backwards and forwards on one of my chairs. Quite expensive, I might add.
Yes.
They've never been invited back.
There you go. See, chair discipline is what's required. We welcome back Brother Matthew, and the Dean is here, and Sister Rebecca. Tonight's confession comes from Harold Tim.
Okay.
Not Harold and Tim, comes from Harold Tim. Thank you, Harold Tim. Dear Father Simon and the most wondrous and marvellous Holy Collective, please hear this confession on behalf of myself and a wonderful little budgie called Sky Biscuit. Wow. I'm writing this tale not 4 hours after an honest act of goodwill led me to committing a heinous faux pas that has affected many. So this is a fresh story. As a wee bit of background about myself, I suppose you could say I'm a bit stuck in my ways. I like things to be in order, and I don't like mess, and I don't like money being wasted. This morning I was feeling rather fed up and tired. I couldn't find a clean pair of socks. We didn't have any hot water. I'd burnt my toast, and because of the budgie's incessant chatter, forgot about the time and was running late to catch my train. As I said, the budgie's name is Sky Biscuit, and first thing in the morning he likes nothing better than to repeat his name over and over and over again, occasionally adding, "Who's a good boy?" and scratch in a Brummy accent. Not a bummy accent, a Brummy accent, whilst whistling very loudly and generally being very noisy and annoying. Sometimes, if he doesn't get any attention, he flaps his wings so much that feathers and other stuff will go flying out of his cage into your cornflakes. We let him out pretty much every day, as this seems to calm him down a bit, but I didn't have enough time for this fateful morning as I had a train to catch. Sometimes I wish we'd bought a goldfish or at least a mute swan. But anyway... As I was leaving the house this morning, I put the wheelie bin out for the collection and noticed that the people in the house opposite had left their two bins, normal household and recycling, in the road and not on the pavement next to their wall. Tusk, tusk, I thought. Being the good neighbour I am, I went over and pushed the bins out of the road and onto the pavement and positioned them by the low brick wall outside their house. As I said, I do like things to be neat. I'm not sure why I bother doing things for these particular neighbours, as they are a funny bunch. They've still got Christmas decorations up in their windows, and they also have a habit of playing the rubettes very loudly at family gatherings. I consoled myself with the thought that at least they had the good sense to move house. I only hoped that the new neighbours who were coming in would be more in keeping with the rest of the road and not be so weird. In the opinion of Harold Tim. As I was doing this incredible random act of kindness, Someone drew up in a brand new Mercedes and pulled into the gap in the road left by the movement of the bins. I congratulated myself on my goodwill and gave myself a little pat on the back for being such a lovable chap and at least making someone's life a little better. Thinking nothing of this apart from smug satisfaction, I started to walk to the station to catch my train, and in doing so noticed a large removal lorry coming past me the other way. It was then I realised why the bins were in the road. You see, Father Simon, we live on a fairly quiet suburban road. And although there is the occasional noisy party, hedge cuttings left on the pavement, cats in our garden, teenagers on skateboards, trick-or-treaters, the old gentleman next door sunbathing in the nude, the drummer at number 82, fireworks on other days than Guy Fawkes Night, the old lady with the incontinent Labrador, the twin toddlers down the road who cry forever when you're having a lie-in, UPVC windows on period houses, and people who decorate their wheelie bins with funny stickers.
Any Draylon in there?
The only real moan I have is lack of sufficient parking for cars. A lot of the time I can't get anywhere near our house to park, so I have to end up leaving the car in one of the adjacent streets. It was at that moment it became obvious to me that bins had been left there to reserve a place for the removal van. I watched as the van stopped in the middle of the road and the driver got out to remonstrate with the driver of the Mercedes for moving the wheelie bins in order to park. It wasn't long before a full-scale argument broke out. In keeping with my good neighbourliness, I turned on my heels and carried on my walk to the station with the sound of shouting ringing in my ears. I thought little of this until later, and I received a phone call from my wife informing me that shortly after I'd left, the dustbin men had turned up in their truck but couldn't get through as a removal van was parked in the middle of the road refusing to move. This was not helped at all by the appearance of the milkman, who was stuck behind the dustbin men, unable to get anywhere because of the various vehicles in front of him. There was, according to my wife, a lot of shouting going on, in fact, an out-and-out brouhaha. So she called the police and told them what was happening in our quiet little street and retired to the front window to watch the unfolding fracas. The police turned up a little later but couldn't actually get their car down the road due to the other vehicles blocking up everything, so they parked their car at the junction at the top of our road, which in turn meant that the traffic had to take it in turns to get past the police car on their way up the road. The two police officers tried to reason with the removal van driver, who explained rather loudly that the driver of the Mercedes, who'd parked in his spot, was now inside his house and refused to move his car until the remover apologised. This situation, my wife explained, was not helped by the arrival of the Ring and Ride bus, which was loudly sounding his horn as he was stuck behind the police car at the top of the road. One of the police officers was dispatched to deal with the Ring and Ride bus, while the other tried to placate the removal van driver. The new neighbours also had turned up at this precise moment to look over their new house, and were shocked at the sight of the police, dustbin men, milkmen, removals company, and various others doing a lot of shouting. This only triggered off tears and screams from their young child, which added to the whole cacophony of the situation. My wife saw this and invited the young couple in with their little girl and made them a cup of tea to help calm their nerves. Unfortunately, by this stage, my lovely wife had released Sky Biscuit, remember him, from his cage to have a fly around. He's a friendly bird at the best of times, but sometimes gets excitable, especially if there are new people in the house. This was one of those occasions, and he must have seen these new people and not realising they were distressed, swooped on the crying child and landed on her head. He then proceeded to peck at her scalp.
What?
It's not an unpleasant feeling, this, if you can imagine. Looks a bit like a woodpecker when he's at full speed. It's like an Indian head massage with the odd stabbing sensation. I've had this many times, but he's never drawn blood yet. I suppose, though, it could be very frightening to the uninitiated and the young. Needless to say, the neighbours didn't stay around for long, and my wife let them out with both mother and daughter in tears, and young father pale and worried about what he'd let himself in for. Outside by this time, other people were in cars trying to leave our road and were getting involved in all the arguments and the shouting. My wife also reported it must have caused a big delay because the traffic hold-up was on the local radio news.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. So I have to seek forgiveness. From the Mercedes driver, the old weird neighbours, the new traumatised neighbours, the police, the removals company, the milkman, the Ring and Ride bus driver and his passengers, anyone who was waiting for their milk to be delivered for their morning cup of tea, and anyone else who suffered as part of my misdirected good neighbourliness. I suppose I should also add my poor wife to the list. I also beg forgiveness on behalf of Sky Biscuit, the friendliest of budgies, who I'm sure doesn't mean to be annoying or loud or frightening, but is just a little misunderstood. It's a whole domestic fracas. It's another sitcom situation. Harold Tim sends in today's story, and he falls at the feet of Sister Rebecca.
Well,
what
I
do you
think,
say?
since when do bins in the road constitute a kind of legal parking, suspension? Surely they should have got the council to suspend parking.
Well, the council aren't going to do anything. Are
I
they?
mean, you can't just put bins in the road and say
But
that's...
People do.
Yeah, people
you
do, but that doesn't mean that it's allowed or
But what
legal.
they leave a gap between the two bins. The clue is the gap between the two
Anyway,
bins.
it doesn't give you any right to park there. So I think it's the fault of the new neighbours, actually, for thinking that gave them the right to put their removal van there. And Harold Tim was just... he thought he was being a good neighbour, didn't he? So it wasn't his fault. It was their fault. They should have thought up some other way of doing it. So I am going to forgive you.
On that basis alone. Marvellous.
There's some interesting story. I quite like... I mean, it's got an old gentleman sunbathing in the nude and an old lady with an incontinent Labrador, and...
Not many stories have that, do they,
No,
to be
what do you
fair?
think?
That's
What do you
God,
think?
it was a good story. A lovely story, in fact.
Yes.
But I don't like Harold Tim. That doesn't help matters, does it, really? But yeah, the bins business is, if you'd gone out there and seen the bins separated by at least a car or a van width, you would think, that's to create a space.
Yes.
The two bins weren't close together. If
Harold
the two
didn't
bins...
get that.
No. And also, you can't blame the neighbours if kids could have put the bins out into the street. Can't automatically blame the neighbours.
I think the problem is they're weird.
Well...
In
It
Harold.
sounds, to be honest, sounds like the whole street is.
In Harold. It's
To be
not a
honest.
street- it's not a street where you're expecting house prices to go up.
Christmas decorations still up. That's bad news. That's bad luck, isn't it, generally? But I still see them. Do you? Have you seen them, Matt?
No.
Yeah, no, there are some still
Matt's
around.
come down on Boxing Day.
So I don't forgive Harold Tim. I don't like him.
Matthew, how does...
I'm with Rebecca on the parking thing.
so it's
Absolutely
just me,
right.
is it?
Yes, it is. It's just you, Deadly. I'm sure my wife won't mind me telling the story because she did exactly the same. She saw our neighbours had left these bins in the street and thought, I'll do a lovely favour for them. I'll bring the bins back in. And of course, they've been trying to save a space, not for a removals van, but for something else. So it's easily done. Did we change the name of the Budgie? I bet we did, didn't we?
No, we didn't. Actually,
Really?
there was an official discussion about changing the name of the
Really?
Budgie,
There
but
was.
the Budgie is actually Sky Biscuit.
BBC lawyers earning
Yes.
their corn. Well done. So what's this Budgie doing pecking people's heads?
They do
That's
that.
No, that's not right at
being
all.
friendly.
That's not right at all. For that reason alone, I am not going to forgive. This is some kind of psychotic Budgie you've got. And also, what are you doing inviting people into your house when you've got a Budgie rampant that might be alighting onto your head and
Yes.
start pecking
Oh,
it?
well, to be fair,
not
they-
forgiven.
They didn't
No.
know that was going to happen.
Well, they
came in
should have known.
unexpected neighbours.
I reckon Budgie-themed confessions, neighbours and parking and wheelie bins.
Yes.
There's going to be a few of those. This is from Ken. Ken's tale begins thus. Dear Father Simon and the Wholesome Collective, about 20 years ago, a group of my like-minded pals would once a year take off to the slopes somewhere in the Alps. At first it was just a few of us, but these trips became such a success. More and more friends made the number of skiers who joined these trips grow so much that we even gave ourselves a collective name. We called ourselves Jocks Abroad, which was sort of Jocks Abroad, but by the time we'd said it a lot, it was Jocks Abroad.
Is that a comment on the accent? Or is that...
No, I'm just saying that's how it's
Oh, it's
written.
'cause- oh, right, okay.
No, they
Right,
actually wrote it Joxabrod. They try to make it sound like a gang. Hi,
Okay.
I'm in Jocks Abroad.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
like a boy band or something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, enough. It was the usual mix of on-slope heroics, but with a high proportion of après ski. In fact, the more the years that passed, the skiing became secondary to the longer and longer après. Well, one year we had a group of about 14 in France. The group was made up of mainly Scots, but also a small group of girls from London. They joined our ranks along with other friends from around the globe. The holiday was a great success with longer and longer lunches and photo opportunities aplenty. Now, photography was then restricted to traditional film cameras, as mobile phones were still just that. You just made calls from them. Most of us carried a camera, so lots of shots were taken throughout the trip. Well, it came to the last day and bags were packed, and we had a few hours before the coach back to transport us to the airport for our journeys home. One of our group, Adrian, a single police officer from Edinburgh, couldn't find his camera anywhere. Being good friends, we went about splitting up to retrace his steps by asking in all the bars, all the restaurants, all the hotels that we had used throughout our stay to find his missing camera. After a few hours of tramping through the snow with no success in locating his camera full of snaps, we left names and addresses with all the possible places it could have been left and reported back to Adrian. A small oversight then became apparent. I asked how much his camera had cost him, as surely he could at least claim for his loss on holiday insurance. £3.75 was the answer.
What?
£3.75? The search party replied together in shock and disbelief at the wasted hours tramping around the village instead of one last après session. It was a disposable camera. Sorry, didn't I mention? Said Adrian. Well, we all flew off to our respective homes, but not before organising a big reunion to be held in Edinburgh in the summer. Fast forward to summertime in Edinburgh at the reunion. Friends flew in from Denmark, London and closer to home. After reliving the great stories of a wonderful holiday, photographs were shared and exchanged, and funnily enough, the lost camera was brought up. Adrian was in another room, and I hatched a plan with the others to get our own back for that ridiculous wild goose chase we'd had in France. I had conveniently purchased a disposable camera on my way to the reunion and suggested to the group gathered that we take photographs of our own photographs on this new disposable camera. So it looks like the real thing. Now, to reflect the quality of such a fine camera, the photos should be suitably out of focus, badly framed, overexposed, underexposed, all easily achievable given the amount of lemonade that we had consumed. Within a few minutes, we had exhausted the 24 exposures which were allowed on these old cameras. When we'd all stopped laughing and could keep a straight face in front of Adrian, it was time to give him the good news. Our Danish friend, known to us all as Hurdy-Gurdy, reported to Adrian that he had some good news for him. One of the places he'd checked for the lost camera in France was, logically enough, the local police station. They, he said, had taken his details and promised to get in touch if the camera should turn up. With the biggest grin I've ever seen, Hurdy-Gurdy pulled from his pocket the so-called lost camera. And Adrian fell for it. Joy lit up his face as he said the magic words we'd all been waiting for. I can't wait to get these processed. Well, we all swore never to tell the truth to Adrian and to keep it going for as long as possible. And sadly, we never actually saw his face when his eagerly awaited snaps came back from the chemist's. But I think that 20 years is long enough for Adrian to ponder from his photos what really happened on that holiday. So, if the photos didn't tally with your memory, there's a good reason for that. You know those scenes that frankly would grace the current movie The Wolf of Wall Street? Oh, no. Well, they were fake and all performed, for your benefit, that night in the summer. The draping, canoodling and posing did not happen for real. We were pretending. The parrot wasn't real, the fruit bowl was borrowed, and the sauces came from room service.
I'll bet they did.
What's in these photos?
Yeah.
Actually, I know, I took that bit out. I'd like to beg his forgiveness in keeping him in the dark for 20 years about what happened all those years ago on a skiing holiday in France, and that our mitigating circumstances were a cold, wasted few hours looking for a cardboard box impersonating a camera. Well, that's Ken with the story of how he ended up, policeman in Edinburgh ended up with a surprising a few months on, surprising souvenir of a holiday that maybe he didn't remember some of those scenes as recorded, and now, 20 years after, he knows exactly why. What do you say, Sister Rebecca?
Does that remind you of a film plot? Does it remind you of The Hangover?
I never saw it.
You never saw it? Have you seen it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's like when they get the camera back and they see all the pictures of what they got up to and they couldn't remember it.
I reckon it happens a lot.
Yeah, it must do, clearly. I'm amazed that Adrian never mentioned the fact. I mean, maybe he was really embarrassed, but maybe he actually did do those things, and that's why he was so keen to find the camera. It wasn't the fact that the camera was only worth £3.75.
Oh, I see, incriminating evidence.
It was the photos on the camera, and he was a policeman, did you say? He was a policeman, yeah.
Yes.
So clearly he had a guilty conscience. That's why he didn't mention that the pictures were quite strange. So I actually think that Ken was onto something, so I'm going to completely forgive you.
Okay, forgiven. So what do you think, Brother Matthew?
First thing here is Adrian clearly doesn't, or forgets to mention that it's just a disposable camera. When my camera's gone missing. Oh, everyone's going to look for my camera because everyone thinks it's worth like 3 figures. Oh, is it only £3.75? Nobody would have looked for it if he'd said that at the start. So that was very convenient. Also, this does make me think, when we take pictures now, most of us take it on digital cameras. So you don't ever have that sort of embarrassing thing where you're at the chemist and you think, you've seen all my pictures.
What embarrassing thing?
Well, we all take embarrassing pictures when we're on holiday. We all do it. And so you don't have to go through that embarrassment anymore. And he did. So for that reason, I am going to forgive, because he clearly had it coming, I think. Yes.
He had it coming?
Yes, he definitely had it coming.
Where did that come from?
And also, I'll tell you the other reason I forgive is because clearly Ken is not a ski ball. Most people who go on skiing holidays just go on and on when they get back about what colour run they were on.
That's
and
true.
have, oh, really? Not interested. I don't tell you how hot it was on my beach.
Sue says, Dear Simon and the rather cool collective, I feel I must seek forgiveness from my dive buddy. My dive buddy, who has budded me on many trips around the world, has looked after me and shared air with me, drunk gallons of alcohol on the varying beaches with me, and followed the guidelines of helping your dive buddy out. This incident, however, I think pushes the guidelines to the limit. Now, I work in shifts, says Sue. My buddy was on the same shift as me, and we were on the late turn, finishing work at about midnight. During the day, my nice new shiny wetsuit had been delivered to work and was in a nice big box. It had remained in the big box all shift, and I transported my new purchase home after work and took it out of the box to admire what a thing it was. It was awesome. I was going to be lovely and warm on our forthcoming trip. I wonder if it fits, I thought. So off I went upstairs to try on my new wetsuit. Anyone who knows anything about wetsuits will understand when I say it was a front zip. They will be way ahead of me now. They will know what's coming. For the rest of you, picture the scene. It's nearly 1 a.m. I am in my underwear and I am trying on my new wetsuit. I pull it on. Legs in, arms in, zip up. Okay, not quite zip up. It's a little tight. Actually, more than that. It's quite definitely far, far too small. Best I take this off then and order the bigger one tomorrow. So I reach for my left shoulder to peel off the suit.
Oh, no.
But I can't reach. It's too stiff. I cannot stretch the suit far enough to grab the corner and push it back over the top of my shoulder. As if it makes any difference, I try to reach my right shoulder with my left hand. No joy there either. Left hand, left shoulder, right hand, right shoulder, lean forward, arch backwards. Nothing. I cannot reach. I am stuck. Do I call the fire brigade? I am proper stuck. Well and truly stuck in a full-length 5mm neoprene wetsuit at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, I got into bed and I tried to sleep.
Really?
I quickly realised you can't sleep in a wetsuit.
No.
I don't suppose there's anyone who's tried that, actually, but you almost certainly can't. And I obviously can't go to my neighbours at 1 o'clock in the morning wearing a...
Well, I
Could
say.
I?
Go on.
Well, maybe I could. I edged myself outside. It took a while as it was chafing badly. And I knocked gently on Mr. Lowry's door.
Oh, yes.
It took a while for him to come to the door, but then again, it was the middle of the night, and he's getting on a bit.
Oh, dear.
Eventually, he opened the door on the security chain, took one look at the woman squeezed into a wetsuit, asking to be unzipped, and shut the door again. And who could blame him, frankly? Anyway, by now, the temperature inside my wetsuit is rising. I was sure I was going to dehydrate if I didn't escape soon. Plus, to be honest, my circulation was shutting down. Pins and needles everywhere. I needed an escape plan. I needed a friend. I needed a buddy. Aha, my dive buddy. They finish work at the same time as me, so they won't be asleep yet, will they? I make my Mayday call. I call my dive buddy. My dive buddy who's just worked the same 10-hour shift as me. My dive buddy who's just got into bed. My dive buddy who lived 20 miles away. My dive buddy who drove all the way through the night to my house in the middle of the night to rescue me from my wetsuit. By this time, I was lying in the hall, on the ground, as it was more comfortable than standing, and I could hardly move, to be honest. Consequently, she had quite a shock, I'm afraid, seeing her dive buddy looking like a beached whale with peely skin. For this, dive buddy, I do need your forgiveness, and I particularly need forgiveness for ruining your mug of hot chocolate that you left on the bedside cabinet, and that was cold by the time you got back because of my inability to wait until a reasonable hour to try on my wetsuit. There is a moral to this, clearly. You need to have someone with you while trying on a new wetsuit. I did, however, learn from the situation, said Sue. There was no repeat performance when the larger suit arrived, the larger suit that was an exchange for the rather damp small suit that was carefully packaged and returned to the store the following day, with the questionnaire, unworn, yes, perfect condition, yes, any problems, no, come on, we've all done it, even Rebecca, says Sue. Well, clearly with inside knowledge. Well, you know, if you return something, have you ever done that?
What, return
Have
something
you
that I've
returned
worn?
something that you've worn and maybe worn to a party?
No.
Have you ever returned something that you've worn outside? Clippity-clop, you know.
Outside? To the neighbour's house, maybe? Perhaps.
Riding crop.
I've returned something that I've worn for longer than 5 minutes.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But less than an hour.
Oh,
well, that's okay.
Fine. Stands up in law, that. Yeah.
A job interview.
No, it wasn't.
So you could make a fantastic appearance and go, look at that looks fantastic, and then you could just whip it off and send it back. Exactly. Anyway, so it's I think Sue was thinking maybe there's some female solidarity to be had here. What do you think?
I think if I had to get my friend to drive 20 miles to get me out of the wetsuit, I may have just got some scissors and cut it off, actually.
Oh, you can't. But
I would feel a bit guilty about that. At 20 miles at 1 a.m.
You can't, but wetsuit's an expensive item.
I
You're
know.
not just going to
that
cut
is
it
true,
off.
but I would feel quite guilty. I mean, it depends on how close she was to her dive buddy, I suppose. But maybe I would have considered that. But yeah, I think it was a bit of a silly idea to try and put it on without anyone else in the house, wasn't it? I think that is the moral of the tale.
Well, an extraordinary idea, and then completely seal that. You could call it. Do you think?
But
the fire
those
brigade
things are
would come out?
terrible. I've done it with the back zip thing, and you really do it when they're too small.
Would
It
the
is
fire
incredible.
brigade come out and rescue you? Do you think?
Well, that is a good point. Maybe she should have called the fire brigade. So I think I do feel sorry for Mr. Lowry as well.
You could call and ring for Alex Ferguson to come round.
Yeah. In fact, they'd probably hang up on you, wouldn't they? So I think, I don't know, it's really difficult. Maybe the fact that the dive buddy was up anyway. OK, you're cracking your knuckles, I'm going to stop. You're forgiven, Sue.
OK, no, it wasn't an indication that you'd gone on too long or anything. Yes, his novice Nigel.
Mr. Lowry's probably having treatment, isn't he, for that strange seal-like woman mermaid that appeared. And they are...
Hello, could you help me out of my wetsuit?
Hello. J.R.R. Get out, you lunatic! So the fact, but she's been diving for all these years. Everyone who wears a wetsuit knows that they are very difficult to get off. And I don't think there's any problem with trying it on, because how do you know if it's going to fit? If you take it back worn, that's fine. All that's fine. But for a seasoned diver, Sue, that was a ridiculous thing to do at midnight, to try on a new wetsuit when you are completely alone, stranded in every sense. So on this occasion... No, you're not forgiven.
I wonder if there are wetsuit confessions and dive buddy confessions, diving confessions anyway. We could have a crop of those. Anyway, what do you think, Matt?
Well, I don't have a lot of sympathy here about the wetsuit because, frankly, you should be able to take it off by yourself. I mean, we're all grown adults around here. You should be able to take off I've got a wetsuit and I can take it off by myself, yeah. Well, yes, obviously.
Is it very small on you?
It is. It is a little. It's a bit snug. It was last summer. Anyway, enough of me. Yes, the neighbour enjoyed that, and for that, I'm going to forgive because it's not every night you get woken up by a young lady in a wetsuit on the front door.
You're still not well, are you? I can tell.
Would your family have a photograph of you in a wetsuit?
No, they won't. Those were all burnt in the fire as well, so that's unlucky. Never mind.
Hey, Matt's friends and
Move
family.
on.
Anyway, that's it. Tell us your own tale, please. We know you have many. It's confessions@bbc.co.uk. More dastardly deeds for you next week. Don't forget to download the Weekly Mayo, which is available now and every Thursday.